You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona with my always my good friends.
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And Shannon G in Mesa AZ.
And we are lucky enough to have a special guest tonight, thanks to Shannon. Shannon, why don't you introduce our new guest?
I'd like to introduce Garry J. Porter, who is the current president of the Arizona Wild Aviators and frequent person I talk with and fly with and enjoy the club with. So I was glad to have Garry come on.
Yeah, Garry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. This is a special week. We have been kind of talking about ourselves about this FAA recognized, what's the I stand for? The identification area, or a FRIA. And it's, obviously getting close to, it's here. It's upon us already. This episode's being recorded right as it's coming out. So we know that we're supposed to be flying in one or have remote ID. And so, which we also know is, maybe coming or not. And so having said that, a few episodes back, Shannon said that they got their FRIA approved. And I thought we had ours, but the last meeting we talked to, there's some holdup on ours. And I'm not really sure. I think it has something to do with where we are, very close to an airport. So I think they're looking into that. Part of our field is underneath the class Delta and part of it's not, but the runway portion is. So who knows? Anyway, so I thought we'd take the opportunity, having Garry on, and let Shannon and Garry kind of walk us through, what the FRIA, how to get to it, kind of all that good stuff. So, it's kind of a mystery. Shannon?
Yeah, so FRIA came up when I was president, but there was a lot of wait and see. So I really didn't do much, and I kind of felt bad about that. And then when Garry took over as president, kind of had to kick it into gear, right, Garry?
Oh yeah, we needed to move pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so just kind of walk us through like the process, because I said I didn't get to that part, and I think it's something that people would have a better understanding of it, so that when it does happen, it makes sense. I guess
take some mystery out of it. I mean, there was actually the process from the club perspective was very simple, and when I say it that way, AMA makes it pretty easy to go out to their site and set up the application, and that worked very, very well. Now, we had a club member that provided me with a nice map that was, like a Google Earth map that he had zoned it off, and it was perfect for what we needed. He's also a member of another club, and he had done that for them. And he goes, "Oh, here's this. I did this while I was just looking at it," and that's what we actually submitted. And it shows kind of the geographical area that we would fly in. And we're lucky enough to be in a flood area that we could say, okay, to a dike, to another dike, that's a fly zone, and it's not over any houses, any roads, any used areas like that, no rodeo grounds, nothing like that. So when I went to AMA, the hardest thing I had to do is get the GPS coordinates to the field, because I think we had it in the 3-digit nomenclature, and they wanted longitude, latitude. So you had to do the conversion, got it, put it in there. And I think they had one question back to me through the whole process, AMA did. And that was just a clarification on the address. And because we don't really have an address, we just have cross streets. So I put the nearest cross streets down, and they just wanted to make sure that they understood where that was. We're lucky enough that if you were to Google our field, which I'm sure they did, it comes up and shows you we're on the map, and that makes it much nicer that way. So having that knowledge base actually allowed that to proceed pretty quick. Through that process, they didn't really do any real notification until the day I got copied on an email from the FAA to AMA saying this field is approved. And then AMA came back and sent us the letter saying you're approved. So, but we knew that that was, it had the application number, it had all the little um, nice things, legalities associated with it there. So, I've kept that record as well, just to have it. But that was great news for the club, and I know like other clubs are still waiting in line. I know one club had to reapply. They were denied in the Arizona, in the Valley area here. So they had to reapply, and they actually got it through and got theirs last Monday. That would have been Speed World. So
Speed World.
I was talking to Jim Allen about that, who's the
Mhm.
president there, and we were comparing notes. And so he has dealt with the FAA for most of his career, so he had a good opportunity to exercise that. And he was filling me in. And they had, they were in Luke Air Force Base space. So that's what caused that to get denied the first time. But they actually got it approved in 3 weeks. So that's almost a record time. But they actually went to the FAA with that to get the right person. And so there's things I guess clubs can do if there's things that pop up. And there's some little nuances, like if there's a road running through near your area and you're flying over the road, that's something you got to be very cautious of. So, they look at all those little things there. So
Wow.
but in a nutshell, that's what happened and what occurred.
Right. Now, your application, you said you went through the AMA portion of it. So the AMA is trying to help us because that's
Right.
basically our community group, right? And then you have to go through them
Though they're a
as
proxy.
opposed
Yep.
to going direct.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes sense.
And then
So
they did a great job
yeah, okay.
because I
So
did
they
follow
would
up.
probably be with everybody though, right? With all the clubs, you normally would go through them.
Yes, in fact, that's
Okay.
that's what's encouraged. And when I hadn't heard back from them for a while, I followed up with them and said, "Hey, is there anything outstanding that, we haven't heard
Mhm.
anything about this? People are getting theirs approved." And they just said, "Be patient. It's in the works. You're in queue."
Mhm.
And so we were, and it paid off.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, that does me. In my head, I was thinking everybody was having to go to the FA and they were having to do everything, but I forgot that you can actually apply through
Yep.
the community or whatever they call that, the community
CBO.
CBO. That's what it is,
Yep.
community organization. So, which if I'm not mistaken, could be a club or a entity, some kind of like a school entity
Yep.
or.
And there's a lot of
Yeah.
them that I think have done that. It's not just AMA.
Mhm.
You see Flight Test out there, right?
Mhm.
That's they're looking at that from that angle.
Right.
And one of our former members, but somebody we keep in touch with, Paul Kalp, I think he did that too with his STEM C program. He had a couple
Mhm.
that he put in for various fields. Actually, there's a little retention basin down, not that far from down the road here, that's been approved as a FRIA. So
Oh wow.
it's interesting to see him. He throws out his all the time, so he's been pretty successful too.
Right. Huh. Well, I'm pretty sure that that's what's holding ours up too. Is that we're in that airport area. They may be looking at it, but it's kind of a shame because the Sun Valley Flyers group has been there for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we get ours soon as well. Because I think Amps has got theirs now too, and
I heard.
yeah.
Did they? Because I heard that they were still
Yeah.
waiting. So
I
No,
think
theirs actually shows up on the website.
Yeah.
okay,
I've seen it.
good.
I think they got it like last week or a week and a half ago because we were talking about it and with one of my board members, and that's what they told me. They said, "Yeah, Amps just got theirs." So,
It-
and they're closer to the airport than we are.
And one of the
Much
things
closer.
that Jim brought up, which was a very good point, was any club that has registered twice, as far as if you go out and look at like Sun Valley, for instance, if you go out and look at
Mhm.
their flying site in the FAA, how they see them, there's two registered, and they have different addresses for the same place because I think the helicopter side is
Yep,
registered
that's right.
separate from the runway, And he
Yeah.
said those they're struggling with. So I don't know what that means, but they
That
may
would
have to
make
come
sense.
back and pick a spot and just say this is
Right.
it, and the helicopter is grouped into that.
Right. Right.
So
That would make more sense. I know that those guys they face a totally different direction and
mhm.
fly a totally different area, but it would be kind of I know a lot of upset people if they approve the helicopter site and then not the runway site because we all of us turbine operators are standing there going, wait a second, where do we go from there? So
They're flying
um,
turbine helicopters.
yeah, that's right. We'll have to switch on over. So
A bunch of ospreys. Everyone's gonna be flying ospreys
that's
now.
true. Yeah, I could do that. Oh. Well, so what was the time frame? Because Shannon said that he got kind of out, and then you kind of had to take over. But and I know that some guys are still waiting. But how long do you think that it took from when you actually went through the process to where you heard something?
um, I believe we had filed probably back in April. I'm just checking real quick to see. I just happen to have I squirrel everything away.
There you go.
And it it was either April or May that we did that, and because it really wasn't open at that point. And once they
Mm,
opened it up, it was a flood, and
right.
we didn't get our approval till uh, August 21st is when we got it. So
Mm,
that's it. That's quite of a span. You're talking about 4 to 5 months, and that's why
right.
I pinged them again to ask, hey,
Hmm.
is everything okay? Do we still do something missing that I need to fill in the blanks on? And they were good with that. They said, oh no,
Right.
no,
Right.
you're all good. We're just processing. Waiting on the FAA.
Right. 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 Now, I guess my other question is too, because I'm not as familiar with it. Like I said, I was talking to some of the board members, and sometimes you get good answers. Sometimes you get guys that go, "Yeah, I'm not really sure." But let's say that in our particular case, we're still waiting on our FRIA. The FAA has given us a deadline, right? And or at least that they say this is when remote ID becomes available. If they have not given the FRIA out, are those clubs no longer allowed to continue to fly, or do they just have to use remote ID when they do fly?
I believe you'd have to go to remote ID. I mean, if you're in a FRIA, you're in a FRIA. But,
Mm-hmm.
I got a separate one just because
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be times, you may want to go out to a dry lake bed and go fly with a bunch of friends.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
covered because you have your
Right.
identification with you. And it's probably a good thing to have at least one that you can put in an airplane and go do that with.
Right. Right. And you said you picked one up already. You already
Yep.
have yours.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Have you tested it out yet?
Not yet, although um, one of our fellow members did last weekend, and I was tracking it. It was he was using the tracking software that's with it, and you could see it moving
Mm-hmm.
around. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually was registering on the ground, and he had it on his phone, and the map was displayed, and you could see the little dot moving around. Of course, you had to zoom in quite a bit to see it because the flight patterns we have they don't they
They're
don't
really
go
tight.
far enough. In a jet it
Right.
might be better, but in a little prop job that was just tooling around the sky, that's a whole different thing.
Sure. 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 So, and then what brand did you get? I
um
mean, there's only one available, right?
no, these were out of Europe.
Oh, the European one. Okay.
Yeah, so this was like they weigh like 1 gram, and
Mhm.
it's got the battery adapters and all that stuff with it. And at the time there wasn't anything else out there available, and it was like,
Mhm.
okay, better just start processing and see what we can get. So it was like a $70 widget, which is
Mm.
going to probably become the norm going forward.
Yeah. That's that's pretty expensive though. I mean, if you're talking about I have some airplanes that are $30, and you put a $70 and it doesn't even go as far as probably the one you were flying around. I can fly this one around my RV garage, so
Well, it'll
but
be
it
something that you're going to need to make sure that your flying is very well done.
yeah, there you go.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
Horizon just came out with theirs, right? The
Mhm.
Spectrum.
Mhm.
So it's priced right at about the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll see where the rest of it goes.
Hmm.
I ordered one, but I obviously haven't got it yet.
Nope.
Yeah, I think they had a flood of orders, and a
Yeah.
lot of them they're probably going to have a hard time, getting to
And
everybody.
I guess the flight test one sounds like it's out and about.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'll have to check on that and see. Well, and that's that's kind of the way that everything is going, I think. But the FRIA is all over. Most of the guys that I know that have been involved in the process have already received theirs. So we're hoping that this is it doesn't get gummed
Fingers
up in the
crossed.
system and get dry. So
Double fingers crossed. Double fingers crossed.
yeah, double fingers crossed. Exactly. It's just one of those things, we all just kind of have to wait and see. Now, having said all that, are you going to take your? I mean, obviously they want a remote ID for every aircraft out there, and someone like me that's got well into 50 to 75 airplanes. I mean, I'm thinking that's can you switch it from one to another?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, and that's what you think you
Oh,
would
yeah.
be able to do? Just drop it at one. And,
well, think of it this way: you're registered to the FAA with that serial number that's in that device, and that's how they would track you anyway. So
Right.
it's not necessarily to the aircraft, because each aircraft, your FAA number that you put on the aircraft is a singular number. So as
Right.
long as you're represented, at least have it there. And if you swap it, you're in the air, they can figure you out.
Yeah. I think the only guys who have to swap, or have to have one for every one of their drones or planes, I think is you're flying 107 commercial drone pilot. I think that's the difference. I think then you have to have a device for each one of your aircraft,
for
each
each.
one of your crafts.
Yeah, and I think it's because they have multiples, like a backup to a backup kind of thing. In case something goes wrong, they can bring it back. Just take the next one up. So they're individually registered, I think. I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I took that test a long time ago, so I'd have to go back and refresh my memory.
So, Gary, what are you going to do, when the day comes and you already have your FRIA, but let's just say, or things don't go right and people still want to fly and the FRIAs aren't up or something happens, then are you going to ground or close your field for that day?
Well, with the FRIA, we're already on the radar.
Right.
So there's like a NOTAM issued that says, hey, there's an established area here that's flying. So there's nothing we have to do outside of that on a day-to-day basis. I mean, once that's registered, once that's there, any map will probably become part of. So
Gotcha.
that's what we're kind of looking for, and it'd be interesting to see where that does track. We're not quite there yet, but I think we will be. So once everything does happen, it's not a mad rush to figure it out. We should, from our perspective, we won't have to do anything. Now, if we go fly somewhere else, you need to find out if that's a FRIA approved field,
Right.
and do all the homework associated with it just to figure it out.
Yeah, because one of the things I was thinking about was, like I said, like in Shannon's case, not in Shannon's case, excuse me, in the case of like a field that does not have, or Mike's case, where they don't have their stuff approved quite yet, so Joe Blow goes out there to go fly, and he's not really thinking about it, and he goes, well, I'm gonna go fly. Hey, I have my remote ID. I should be good to go. And so one of the things I was thinking about was, let's just say that guy happens to crash his aircraft around smack into somebody's car. And he goes, well, at least I'm covered by the AMA, because they'll cover me for my insurance. And then he goes in to file his claim, and then they go, hey, it's denied. And he goes, well, why was it denied? And they go, well, were you flying in regards to all the rules that you're covered under? And he goes, well, yeah, I think so. And they were like, well, were you flying at a field that was, were you flying out of FRIA? And he's like, well, not yet. And then they can go, well, we're not gonna honor your claim because you weren't flying under the full rules. You know how insurance companies are, and and then you're stuck. Because that was one of the things I was just thinking about. I was just like, wow, people may go, they may go fly it at their field and go, well, I should be covered, or I should be, what's changed? Go fly. Something happens, and then the insurance company's like, yeah, here, tick, no, denied, because you weren't following the full rules that you were supposed to be flying under. So, what do you guys think about that?
I think we're on a wait and see with that. Really, I don't know if there's actually an answer for that.
Yeah, and I know that the if you read all the fine print on the AMA, they're not the first. They're not the
Right, your
first
your homeowner's
in
insurance or
line
somebody,
for
but I'm just
insurance.
saying
Yeah, your
insurance
homeowner's
companies
insurance.
in
They're like a
right.
supplemental.
I'm just saying in
Yeah,
general.
no, I agree. If it was even right in general,
I'm just saying that they're
my
trying to get out of paying any claims.
right, and I think I kind of agree with Shannon on the fact that it's probably we'll know for sure when that on and if that ever happened. We would have to see how it works. My big hang up or the big question for me is that according to the FAA, anybody can fly at a FRIA. So like in my particular case, we have to lock the door. We have to lock a gate behind
Right.
us. And yet it says right here in the rules, anybody can fly there, but you're not really technically a member of our club.
Oh, I didn't.
So how do you reconcile, if that's the case? I know you guys and we have, guest passes or day passes or whatever, but in reality, if somebody was driving through, like if Jay and I go on a road trip and we pull up to, some club, normally it's like, hey, we're AMA members, we're good to go. But if you just are anybody else, you're not a member of the AMA, according to the FAA, you have to fly in a FRIA or you can fly in a FRIA and you can just walk right in there and start flying.
Ooh.
Am I misinterpreting that?
I think though that you're hitting a point, but I also think that you go back to how the basis is for an AMA club. I mean, to fly, our charter for a club says everybody has to be an AMA member, due to liabilities, due to insurance, due to the negotiation with landlords, if you will, leasees and leasers, being able to pay things out. And it's all wrapped around being an AMA member, having the site insurance through AMA, which somebody who isn't an AMA member is not covered by. So that changes the whole makeup of that, but it does open up something we have to look at. And I don't know, you get tired of legislating everything, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I just want to go fly my plane, right?
And
right.
that's it.
I just want to show
I was able to fly it last week. This week I can't.
I know. Right.
Well, and I think because the FRIA is under the CBO, I think that's the CBO being AMA in our case. I think that still is the deciding factor. That's what I'm assuming, and I hope I'm right. I think Gary thinks the same.
Well, yeah, and I think that because AMA stood in and worked with the FAA for us to be able to get our FRIA, I think that's all conjoined. So, and we'll probably see AMA rules coming down around some of this later once it gets established, because it's too soon now for anybody to make any kind of move around that. But they'll probably, as we see patterns and everything else, that might come up.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Anytime they start putting stuff out like that, and all of a sudden your brain kind of goes into this, well, what if mode, right? And unfortunately, you can think of a million what ifs, and then until they happen, everybody's like, oh, that's not going to affect us. That won't happen. That won't happen, and then it does.
Yeah, I just don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be.
Well,
that guy either.
I had a question about for events that are at really odd places like Best in the West, at Buttonwillow.
Right.
That's not a regular RC venue.
No.
So
well,
is it going to be?
I thought that was a Barks Field, though.
It is a regular airport. I mean,
Yeah, so you're going to be regulated. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure how they get the.
Yeah, so I didn't know if they were doing. I'm assuming that they've done whatever they're supposed to do, but I just kind of curious what is it going to be remote ID or does it need a FRIA for the event, that kind of thing.
Well, that's very
interesting.
If
they get a temporary FRIA.
There's been some stuff announced by the CD saying, "Oh, we're not going to, you don't have to worry about the tag, any IDs, things like that." So maybe it will come to play because it is at an airport. But I think, again, it goes back to wait and see how that's going to be structured and how they're going to do it. Because you might be able to lease it for a short period of time and get, I don't think there's such a thing as a temporary FRIA, but you might be able to do something with the registration.
Mm. And you know what? They may fall under the FAA's purview of an actual airport operations too, right? I mean, the only thing the only thing the FAA has looking at us is that we're an unmanned aerial system, but we're still flying at an approved flying, like an airport. An airport is open for flying. You can fly everything from, hang gliders to hot air balloons. Those are all flying
Yeah.
in the system.
The
So I
site's
wouldn't.
already registered.
Correct, an actual airport. So because I know that when we've had like air shows and stuff up in not Flagstaff but Embry-Riddle area up there. What is that?
Prescott.
Prescott, yeah. Because I've been up there once or twice where the guys were flying RC airplanes, and I think at Williams Field too. Maybe they did some, and they were covered under that too. They would fly it, but they would, there's a tower there.
So it's just like getting the NOTAM, right? They're
permission
just
to
going to put a
take off
NOTAM
with it.
up over for this area.
Maybe
Here's a NOTAM
that
for,
they
or
put a
this
NOTAM
field.
for.
Here's a NOTAM that
Mm-hmm.
don't fly below 4,000 feet or 1,000 feet or something.
Right. It's interesting. There's actually a little town on the other side of Phoenix called Coolidge, and there's an airport over there. And just north of Coolidge, there is a little area that's a restricted airspace. And we have a lot of flight training going on in Phoenix, and everybody kind of knows where that little strip of area is. And you can ask someone, "Hey, why is that restricted?" Because it's just out in the middle of nowhere. It's like desert, but it's this long rectangular shape, right? And I asked someone one time, I said, what why is that area restricted? If it's over Luke Air Force Base, I can pretty much guarantee you they're flying F-16s out there. But this is out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just this weird shaped, venue. And I said, it's basically restricted. Most restricted airspace is only during certain times, but this one's 24/7, 365 days a year. And I've inquired several people wanting, to know, not telling them that I already knew the answer, but the answer is that the United States Army owns that airspace and it is specific for UAS launches and recoveries. So they have that NOTAM, or it's not NOTAM, but it's a restricted airspace for all the time, 365 days a year. Now they don't necessarily use it that often, but it is designated for unmanned aerial system training.
Hmm.
So very interesting. So that may be, since they're able to NOTAM that or put it in a restricted airspace, they may be able to do something temporary that says this area right here and these spaces is going to be used for UAS operations for these particular days. So very interesting. Very
Hey,
interesting.
Mike, I wonder
So
up in Alaska, remember we had that club that flew right at the end of the runway there. I wonder what they're
Yeah.
doing or how that's going. If you guys are having
that-
problems just because you're on the tip of a airspace, imagine those guys calling up and go, "Yeah, we want to approve our runway that's right at the end of a active military runway." How that's going to go over?
that may not go over. I mean, that may be not a problem at all, though, because the military basically has their operation. The FAA doesn't really mess with the military side of
Yeah,
it.
but that's what I'm saying. Here,
Um,
you have a field that's right there at the end of your runway. Gee whiz,
Yeah.
we can approve that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's been there for
I
50
wonder
years,
I
not
wonder
a
if it
problem.
just. I know, right? Right. And now all of a sudden
Yep.
it is. Well, by the time this comes out, you have already known, but we do know that there has been a delay in the remote ID. It has been pushed off for a little bit because there's still questions, or they can't. Everybody can't get the little remotes. I mean, obviously Shannon's still waiting on his, and the rest of us. So they did give a little bit of relief for that, I guess. So I guess we're kind of wait and see for that as well. We should know by the time this comes out. We should know something. When does it? It goes into how long has it been pushed off, Shannon?
It's early 2024, right? I think it was
So it's
6 months. Was it 6 months? I think.
6
I think it was
months.
March. Yeah, March. I think.
Yeah,
3 or
March.
6 months,
Yeah.
something like that.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So we should know. I mean, this episode comes out and we're still kind of waiting, but we should know more information, I think, towards the end of this year. But that definitely has an effect on production and getting everything out, and it allows people to go ahead and order them and then still get them and still fly at the FRIA. So,
Got to get them in the stores for Christmas.
I know, right?
Eh.
Everybody gets one for
I
Christmas.
got a remote ID.
Yay! You got the blue one. I got the gold one.
Collect them all.
Collect them all, kids. That's it. So I
That's
gotta.
right.
I know you were saying not to do too many what ifs, but my what if is, I guess this is my prior military type deal. But if we were going to be, I don't know, coming up with something like this, I know my general would say to me, Captain Neely, so when did you test this, and what happens when you turn on 1,000 of those? How does that affect our
Yeah.
overall systems? Yeah, I don't know, sir. I'll find that answer out for you, sir. So I'm just like, I'm not seeing, I was kind of looking through some stuff and I'm not seeing anywhere, yes, the FAA has been, going, hey, you got to have XYZ, but I haven't seen where they've done a test, functional test to have 1,000 of these things turned on outside an airport to see how it affects the airport, or if there's going to be any vulnerabilities by having the system open, backdoored, into their system, if that's going to cause an issue. I don't know. Those are just some of the basic things that comes to my mind. If ever all of a
You
sudden,
can tell Jay was.
well, I'm sorry,
You can tell Jay was in the. You can tell he was in the safety side of it.
yeah.
He's always
Well, I'm
thinking about
just,
stuff like that. What I can tell you is that ADSB, which is what this remote ID has been based off of, which is the automatic broadcasting for the aircraft, for live aircraft, almost everybody has those now. And so at any given time, you've got 5,000 airplanes in the air, all telling each other everything, where they're going and what they're doing and all the information. So I would suspect that the information being broadcast out is not as it does not have as much interference, and then having the ability to look at it, because that's one of the things that we don't have in the remote ID. It's just an outward broadcast. There's no inside, so I can't look and say, hey, everybody at the field is flying on my screen, right? Where in aviation I can, if I have that capability, I can ping everybody around me and look and see where they are compared to where I'm at. And so we have ADSB in and we have ADSB out. And I suspect that right now it's all out. I don't necessarily know if they would ever really want something in, but at least for me, reading the website on the FAA's website, it basically specifically said it helps the FAA and law enforcement find the remote ID, person. And that's the biggest concern for me, is that, safety is one thing. I fly real airplanes for a living. I can tell you I can't count on either hand how many times I've been interfered with by a drone or even seen one, because at 600 miles an hour, drone's
Zoom.
the last thing I'm going to see going by the window. It's going to be a speck. But at the same time, I can see that someone might complain, and then it gives law enforcement. So it sounds to me that this was under the guise of safety. The same thing happened to the ADSB. The FAA said we will never use it for any type of restriction for punitive action, and that's held true for the FAA. What it has not held true for is every other government agency, because every other government agency has stuck their stamp on it and said, hey, we just noticed that you were out flying and you did something, and now we're coming after you. And it's everything from tax evasion to airspace violations for the Parks and Recreation. It went after a pilot for flying at a certain altitude over a protected area or whatever. I mean, it's kind of, the tax evasion one was crazy. It was a guy at my airport who brought his airplane in for the summer. And in the state of Arizona, if your vehicle resides here for more than 30 days, you have to register it in Arizona. Well, he's down here for 3 months, then he goes back, right? He's a snowbird. And so he brought it down and he, was flying it, and they actually tracked it and said, hey, we noticed that you flew it here and you flew it here. Every other day you were flying, and it's been more than 30 days, and you should have registered it. So we're coming after you for the registration. And then it's, $350 a day in fees or fines. and it's been 90 days.
Yikes.
And he was like, what? And yet they tracked him for it. So
Wow.
he got the FAA involved, and the FAA is like, well, we're not using it for any, enforcement action, but the state of Arizona is.
Yeah, I would think
They're
that would
coming
be an
after the
easy
guy.
one to beat, because if you had a decent lawyer, they would go, well, did you issue a warrant to get that information? Well, no, we just pulled it right up over here. Oh, really?
But that's what I'm saying. It's
did
like
that without a
everybody,
warrant?
everybody has this. So anyway, I don't want to get off on too many what ifs, but I do know that, to me, when I read this and some of my, and I'm in aviation, so I mean, I totally understand the push for safer skies and not having someone do something that's, going to cause damages. But it just seems to me that, sometimes I think we're going to hear more people, law enforcement or people that are in neighborhoods. We have a neighborhood just north of you guys, Field. And, what would it be for someone to start calling and saying, hey, that guy flew right over my house, even though we all know that we didn't. I got guys right here that talk about, airplanes over their places. And I'm like, dude, I've flown over my house and you couldn't pinpoint. I mean, I'm not flying near your house at all because I fly over this area occasionally. And, we can all see it. And you're not right over the house, but it's a big enough, it's far enough that I can see it. And I think that is over. So I don't know. Those are all interesting things. Gary, you don't have any of those answers, though, do you?
No, but I do know that they were powered like by a single cell lipo. So the range itself, antenna placement, things like that are going to be
Right.
It's not going to go too far. They're
Yeah,
going
I
to
heard they
have the
barely go a
van pull up
mile
into the
to
neighborhood.
5 miles, if that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the van's going to have to pull up into the neighborhood to find you.
Oh, geez, the van, the black van.
The van or the black helicopters. Oh, the black helicopters.
Well, it just depends. But I mean, it's we're low. We fly low to the ground considerably, and for most part, when you think about it, there's a lot of noise that you're flying in the middle of, and it'd be definitely hard to find someone. I mean, if you're flying at 1,200 feet, then it's a little different because you're up above some of that. But like we do, we're flying, I like to fly around the cactuses out there because they're good little pylons. Sure. But, when you're down that low, and then if you have natural areas like, earthen dams around the area that you are, like we do and Sun Valley does, I mean, it's very difficult for that signal to propagate out beyond that.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So, well, those are all interesting aspects of this, and we'll definitely have to talk more about it. Unfortunately, our time is up for this episode. We kind of went over, but we do appreciate Gary,
Thanks, Gary,
hanging out with us and telling us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Telling us what the what the process was and how long it takes, and giving us his insight. So we definitely appreciate it. I know he's a busy guy, and this is awesome to have him join us.
Yeah, we've got a field to clean up tomorrow.
Oh, yes, all that damage.
True. Yeah.
See your smiling face out there, Shannon, about 7:30.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Yeah, just in case you're wondering, the field got damaged in a microburst or tornado or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, there was some serious damage done to their field, and we're hoping that you guys can get that all handled and
I think we will.
And back into. Yeah, I don't have any doubt. You guys, it's a great club, and everybody pitches in. I've never seen groups come together kind of like you guys do. So, good luck with that. I am headed to work, but otherwise I cannot help. So, all righty. Well, that's it for this week. I'm Michael from Arizona.
I'm Jay from the hills of Texas.
And Shannon G in Mesa AZ signing off.
See you in 2 weeks.
And we want to appreciate Gary once again. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.